Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlocked. So much to get into on Saudi Arabia, but if you've been listening to us for years, you'd have heard the warnings already about will the Saudi sports funds dry up? So lots to get into this week, particularly the FIFA Congress with Tariq Panja from the New York Times, Martyn Ziegler from the Times, myself, Rob Harris from Sky News. Unfortunately, none of us in Vancouver. Is that because there's concerns about the roads?
A few other reasons maybe for us, but yes, obviously roads, getting there was a big concern for FIFA because they applied to Vancouver police for Gianni Infantino to have the same level 4 security protocol to go through traffic lights, the police escort, sort of normally reserved for the US president, just one below the Pope, and even more than the Canadian's own Prime Minister.
Well, guys, can I just say, Gianni Infantino, when he came in, he was saying he was going to be as normal as possible. No more excess, no more luxury, no more special treatment. But let me lavish some special treatment on both of you. You may need a police escort for your new baubles. Congratulations to both of you. Award winners, SJA award winners, both of you.
Thank you so much.
Very kind of you, Tariq. Yes, congratulations, Rob. We both emerged carrying a sizably weighty gong. The only reason Tariq didn't get one is that he never enters. So,
please. And it was at the London Palladium as well, guys. It was a new venue. What was that like, getting an award at the London Palladium, a venue of legends?
Well, having to amble up on stage somehow, particularly when you're not expecting to go up there. And yes, it's an actual stage on the theatre right out in front of you. Slightly different type of venue. The last time we were there for a football event, we actually ended up at the bar with Luka Modric.
The FIFA Best Awards. So no mishaps, Rob, on stage. No Stephen Fry moment.
I think I did cut across the other person getting an award before me. Just ill-prepared for getting up on the stage there.
No, but well done, guys.
Enough about us, and we don't enter the pod for the podcast category, so we're the moral winners.
Exactly. But yes, back to Gianni Infantino and that security traffic protocol. It's not the first time it happened. They'd also had it applied for and rejected in New Zealand in 2023 at the Women's World Cup. Bit embarrassing, do you think, for FIFA, Rob?
Well, they're clearly concerned by the fallout, and it was a story originally broken by Canadian media. So not people, as they might say in FIFA, with an agenda against Gianni Infantino somehow. That's where it flowed from. Interestingly, a new approach from FIFA media that's ratcheted up, which is replying to lots of stories on X that are covering the issue and putting their version out. And they said that FIFA never requested a specific level of police motorcade for the FIFA president, saying that the FIFA president was not aware or involved in any requests with authorities in relation to his transportation and security matters for the Congress. We did hear from a named police spokesman who did say, as FIFA executive do not meet internationally protected person standards that would warrant such an escort, talking about closing roads, intersections, not adhering to traffic devices, the request was declined. So it confirmed there was a request. But I think what FIFA are trying to do is distance Gianni Infantino from that. So you just hope someone isn't getting the blame there in protocol.
No, and the other thing with the Canadian, I think it was a broadcaster, they did something I thought that was super interesting to go alongside this, is, do you know who this man is? Do you know who Gianni Infantino is? And they didn't. Like, maybe they found the only two people who didn't. But the point is this, they're trying to make is this guy could walk down the road and no one would probably know who he is. He doesn't need this type of excess or whatever support. And like, who do they think they are? Like, it's a football organisation. It is a very strange thing to do. But this Congress, guys, it's taking place 6 weeks, 7 weeks before the World Cup. Traditionally, Congresses are held around the World Cup because everybody is there. It saves on budget. FIFA, in the last weeks, and we've covered this, has said, look, with these ticket prices are really expensive because we need to invest all of this money to grow football. Was this the best use of FIFA's money to have these guys fly to Vancouver? They're going to all meet each other in a few weeks anyway, for a Congress at this point. I can't remember one happening separately like this. Can you?
There was one in Qatar but that was around the World Cup draw, so everybody would be going for there anyway. So I think you're absolutely right. Why spend millions and millions of dollars to have this event just a few weeks before the World Cup? It makes no sense at all. And actually, that is why, I guess, certainly from my point of view, why I'm not there. Because very expensive year covering the World Cup for media organisations, and what are we going to get out of it? Gianni Infantino, did he do a press conference?
Nope, not at all. You could say one reason to do this in Canada was because they don't have the official opening game, they don't have the final, so this is their prestigious moment in the build-up to the World Cup. Some important decisions to be taken as well around the FIFA Council and the International Football Association Board. Obviously, they could be taken virtually. And if it hadn't been in person, the FIFA Congress, we wouldn't have got the Gianni Infantino moment with the Israelis and the Palestinians, which we'll get to in a moment. What about the IFAB meeting? And now, this is something that shows the benefit of media engagement, because when we were at the main IFAB meeting in Wales at the end of February, Gianni Infantino did do an interview. I spoke to him particularly about racism, and it's where he floated the concept about players being sent off if they cover their mouths and are confrontational to an opponent. The presumption will be it is offensive. And it's a pretty rapid response to the Gianluca Prestiani abuse of Vinicius Jr. in that Benfica Real Madrid game. And IFAB did advance this into the laws of the game, can be taken up by any competition. The World Cup will adopt it along with another change as well.
This is a sort of, to say to me, slightly knee-jerk reaction to the Afghan final issue in Senegal. Walked off the pitch for some minutes and they went back on against Morocco. So now there's competition organisers can bring in a rule, and FIFA will for the World Cup, that if any player leaves the pitch in protest at a refereeing decision, then they get an immediate red card. So if they all walk off the pitch, then what, do they all get red cards? I mean,
yeah, and
presumably.
that's the end of the game, right? So it's a forfeit. It's another way of forfeiting a game, presumably, right?
Well, five players being sent off would lead to it being abandoned. And I'm sure largely the laws of the game do cover this, but maybe they've just added it in to harden it up to empower the referee, that if you do walk off, as we've seen, well, certainly the CAF statutes made it very clear, although they're open to interpretation by some about why the referee didn't abandon the match. But yeah, they're reacting quickly to these incidents that have happened in recent times.
And it is interesting that which ones rise to the level of, oh God, we got to change the rules of football, because we're still waiting for major racism sanctions or decisions or any action on things that have taken place in FIFA purview, the Club World Cup incident, for example. It seems like if it becomes a major issue, then it happens. Is it a good thing? Probably. I don't know. But it became international news, so they did it. Now, if you're a player who's been at the receiving end of racism that didn't get all of this attention, you might be wondering why FIFA hasn't taken action in those cases. But, there we are.
You are talking about what happened at the Club World Cup last year with Antonio Rudiger, the Real Madrid player, reporting being racially abused, and the case just disappeared. We have had the verdict in from UEFA on Prestiani since we had our last episode, and we discovered something that perhaps was a bit under the radar in that, because it was in 2013 we were at a UEFA Congress in London and they introduced the 10-game minimum ban for discrimination. But you go into the statutes and the regulations and it says, or any other appropriate sanction. And that's what actually happened in this case with the ban.
I know, I remember that. There's lots of jumping up and down, like I think the English FA hadn't got as strict a ban as UEFA, people were saying, and people, why isn't it 10? Why isn't the FA having 10 games like UEFA? Actually, turns out UEFA never had a automatic 10-year game ban either, because Prestiani got 6 game bans. Three of them suspended, but not for racial abuse, for homophobic abuse, because it's the breach of the same rule. And it probably was because he had already admitted to the homophobic abuse, then it probably made it easier that for FIFA to avoid any appeals, etc., etc.
because there's been a lot of questions about this whole process on the extreme end, quite abusive comments about Vinicius suggesting he made it up. And yet clearly he did hear something. And that's why there is this ban now in place. Prestiani obviously outraged, although the sense was he was saying it was not racism, it was only homophobia that somehow came across in some of the interpretations of that. So still a form of discrimination. And the sanction that has been introduced, admission of guilt, something else Gianni Infantino said to me in that interview at the end of February was there should be leniency if someone does admit wrongdoing and shows contrition rather than the minimum ban being put in place.
He didn't, did he? So there you go. He said, yeah, I wasn't racist, I was homophobic. Is that contrition?
I suppose it makes it an easier case to conclude if you've admitted it. So
yeah, I'm sure they took the path of least resistance, UEFA, in doing that, and maybe that's a pragmatic thing, but you kind of also feel you'd like them to have prosecuted him for racism. We had Mbappe was the independent witness, or at least although from the same team as Vinicius Junior, at least it was another voice saying he'd heard the racist abuse on several occasions.
Mm-hmm.
One racist incident recently in Major League Soccer ahead of the World Cup. An Inter Miami player, Yannick Bright, who is black, banned for racial abuse, but he'd been sent off for one match ban for that, so one additional match. Quite an interesting case.
What happened?
Well, he's alleged to have used the N-word during a match to an opponent.
Towards a player, yeah, okay, yeah.
And it does say in the MLS announcement, Bright is participating in and must complete a restorative practice program. And it talks about how MLS considers many factors, including the player's immediate acceptance of responsibility for harm caused by the misconduct, eagerness to begin a process to repair it, and cooperation with the league's review.
Yeah, interesting case. Interesting.
So on to the FIFA Council meeting that also took place in Canada. And perhaps the most interesting thing was right at the bottom of the press release, the very last paragraph.
Yes. You and I both spotted this, Rob. Proposal, which is going to go to all football stakeholders, that every club must have an under 21 or under 20 player from homegrown, i.e., comes through the academy in that country, on the pitch at all times. I mean, if this came in, it would just revolutionise transfer policy, team tactics. I mean, is it workable?
I think two things here. On one level, great, because I think there's an element, a tiny element here, of doing something for competitive balance in a way that, you homegrown players and you do that. But the risk here is you suddenly have, and we're already seeing it, to be honest, it's not discussed enough, I don't think, but the trade in children, 14, 15, 13, that is taking place, certainly in the Premier League and probably elsewhere, for talent and how they're moving between teams. I think that's going to exacerbate this, and it is potentially a bigger risk if this comes in like that. I think they're trying to do a good thing, but the consequences of it could lead to a bad thing. And football, for some reason, maybe other industries too, often the worst does happen.
There are already UEFA rules, aren't there, in terms of the requirements on homegrown players in Champions League squads, for instance?
Yes, there are. I think there is something like 8 in the squad, the homegrown rule, but they don't have to be on the field, which is what this is saying. And this would be a big deal. One other thing, it also would connect the club to its fan base. Fans love a local boy, local girl in their teams. I think that's a positive on that score.
I got Opta to look at some Premier League stats about under 21 homegrown players who'd started matches for, because obviously you'd have to start the match for Premier League clubs. Manchester City came out top, actually. 31 of 33 games they've had an under 21 English player. Bottom, Bournemouth, Brentford. And then Arsenal and Liverpool also won each, I think, only one game each. No, 2 games each.
Interesting, Brentford, because years ago now, Brentford were thinking about scrapping their youth academy completely, saying it doesn't work for their model, saying that their kind of trading model, it doesn't fit, and it's very unlikely that an academy player who will be in Brentford's academy would make it into their first team. So they didn't want to do that. This was years ago. I don't know whether that's still a policy. And certainly with this, that creates more incentive, obviously, to create players.
There are unforeseen consequences that you'd have to address. So if you've got your under 20 player on the pitch and suddenly there's a concussion incident, well, can you not take him off? Because then you'd be breaching the rules in terms of not having an under 20 player, or any other form of serious injury. You'd have to leave them on with something broken.
Maybe not. Maybe get another one from your academy and replace
it on the bench for some reason.
Put them on the bench. Maybe there's like,
Yeah, but if you've had multiple things in a game, you have to foresee every consequence, don't you? You could have had
this is like a Harris prediction for the future.
Yeah.
This is going to happen, Rob. This is going to happen, and we'll go back to this. Oh yeah, remember when Harris said this crazy set of circumstances were going to happen, and here we are at name the stadium.
Given that we started the pod talking about having to make knee-jerk rule changes, you saw it to recent instances in matches, it's not particularly outlandish. It could happen.
Maybe the rule is they have to start a match, and maybe after 3 minutes something very cynical happens, and cheers, lad, off you go. Here is Carlos Bocanegra or whoever you're coming on.
Actually, they do have that in some low league competitions in England already, similar to that. And people have coaches have messed around with it a bit, but generally it's worked. That's a better idea.
In fact, it was only earlier this season that Robbie Savage, the Forest Green manager, made 4 substitutions early in a National League game. That was due to the rules requiring teams to start at least 4 players in this cup competition that had started in their previous league match. This would be about ensuring they play strong sides. Those substitutions all came in the opening minutes. So there's always ways of getting round the rules. There was something else from the FIFA Council meeting, a decision to allow the Afghanistan women's national team to continue playing, now entering official competitions under the auspices of FIFA. Now, that hasn't happened since the Taliban returned to power in 2021 and banned women from playing sport, part of a whole suppression of women's rights in Afghanistan. So FIFA have had to pick up the baton, unlike we've seen in cricket. They did manage to play some friendlies last year. Now, it has required a change at FIFA. So now they say that in consultation with the relevant confederation, FIFA can establish and approve the registration of a national or representative team under exceptional circumstances where a member association is unable to do so. They say the aim is to ensure players are not excluded from international football due to situations beyond their control, in line with FIFA's statutory principles of universality, inclusion, and non-discrimination. But you could say that the Afghan FA is breaching those rules on discrimination. The fact they have a men's team, but won't play a women's team. They haven't suspended Afghanistan from playing football completely. And you've got Human Rights Watch saying that FIFA's action should serve as a model for how international sports bodies should respond in these situations. But could we see other countries who don't want to run a women's team, who not only discriminate against women, but also just don't want to fund the women's programme, decide, actually, we'll just let FIFA run the women's team and there's no consequence for us in terms of allowing the men's team to continue playing in FIFA and regional competitions if we wish to?
Yeah, so it's great news finally for the Afghan women's footballers and those who've championed that team from around the world. But also you get a sense that FIFA has let off the Afghan FA. Like, they've had to do all of this because the Afghan FA had refused to have a women's team. Perhaps something alongside that would have been a punishment of sorts, a sanction of sorts to the FA over there for not doing this. But this is FIFA, this Gianni Infantino's FIFA, and they're not really keen on, I guess, imposing penalties on FAs, particularly when it comes around to saying, hey, guess what, I'm standing for re-election again.
Now, on to the Congress in Vancouver. See, there lots of meetings, lots of reasons for everyone to be there, you could say. No media allowed on the floor of the Congress room. We used to be able to wander around to mix with the members, to have conversations with them. But this was not about any decisions that the Congress made that got all the headlines, but what happened when Gianni Infantino, tried to stage a photo op.
Yeah, we had the president of the Palestinian Federation giving a sort of impassioned speech, as has happened in the last few Congresses, and then a response from the vice president of the Israeli National Association. And then Gianni Infantino tried to sort of usher them together. I think he wanted to try and get a photo of them shaking hands or something, at least standing close together as a sort of, his peace initiative. But it didn't work out, did it? I mean, it tried for about 2 minutes, all got rather embarrassing.
It did, and we could see it on the live feed from FIFA. And I think whoever's controlling that realised that it was going wrong. It took them a while, though. I think it was going on for about 2 minutes, and then it kind of panned all the way to the back, so we couldn't see what was happening. This was Gibril Rajoub, the Palestinian FA president, saying he didn't want to be in a photo, and he spoke about it after. He said, how can I be in a photo with this guy? And he went on to talk about the politics of the moment, Benjamin Netanyahu war, and also, let's not forget, this comes after the Palestinians. They didn't have their 2 complaints against Israel upheld by FIFA, and whether it goes to CAS or not, we're going to find out. I just think Gianni Infantino clearly misjudges. Did he really think Gibril Rajoub were going to go on that stage, smile for a photo op, given the backdrop of Israel and Palestine right now? And then even if he did, do we think Gibril Rajoub could then go back to Palestine and say, oh, guys, yeah, I'm back home now, having had a photo opportunity like that? What was Infantino's mindset thinking? I mean, hard to, without asking him, obviously we didn't get a press conference. What could he have been thinking?
Together, President Rajoub, Vice President Suleiman, let's work together. Let's work together to give hope to the children. Please, we work together. You have my commitment. You have the support of the whole room. Shukran jazilan.
Well, a very delicate situation, and these 2 officials seem to be ambushed on stage at a time of intense friction, with protests from the Palestinian FA about the lack of action taken against Israel for teams in West Bank settlements still being allowed to play in Israeli competitions. They say that should not be allowed because they are teams effectively in Palestinian territory. We did see the Israeli FA recently fined by FIFA for discrimination, but not punished for the settler teams, and that's why the Palestinians are appealing at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Now, who are the 2 individuals? Well, we've not really seen much of Bassem Suleiman before. He is the vice president of the Israeli Football Association, leading the delegation in Vancouver. He is the first Israeli Arab to serve in such a senior position in Israeli football, and he was making the point about how this shows that coexistence can be promoted in Israeli society, with Arabs as well featuring in the Israeli national team, and wanting to use that as a bridge for peace. Gibril Rajoub is someone we're a lot more familiar with. He's been president of the Palestine Football Association for many years, and Sepp Blatter was very sympathetic towards trying to help them in the latter years of his presidency. The Palestinian FA did become a full member of FIFA in 1998, something which the Israelis do say they supported at the time, something highlighted at the Congress this week. Now, Rajoub has many roles. He's not just heading the Football Association, he is also leading the Palestine Olympic Committee. He has political roles as well. Now, that is crossing politics and sport, something which FIFA statutes do often say should not happen. He's General Secretary of the Fatah Party, which is in power in the West Bank. He does have a past which involves serving over a decade in Israeli prisons after being convicted of terrorism offences in his youth for throwing a grenade at a bus. But since then, he has assumed these political roles, and now he's very much on the world stage fighting the Palestine FA's cause against Israel at FIFA.
Infantino, I think with good intention, he's trying to have a joint photo or shake hands. But my analysis and my understanding that the Israeli representative is not a qualified partner to shake hands with him. You know, he is defending Netanyahu and his government, which I think is isolated, and I think the whole world now believe that we are victims and the Israeli government should be sanctioned.
Israel has also been resisting calls for its teams to be completely suspended from international competitions. UEFA and indeed FIFA have shown no desire to do so following the war launched by Israel on Gaza, following the Hamas attacks on Israel on October the 7th, 2023. And there are still deaths in Gaza, despite the fact there is a nominal ceasefire phase between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, but there are ongoing deaths at times in Gaza. And you look at what unfolded on stage, and Gianni Infantino was hoping spontaneously these two individuals would just agree to shake hands. And I don't know if he was trying to recreate that moment from the White House lawn more than 30 years ago when Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin shook hands, a big moment for peace, but it didn't happen.
Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat had signed a peace accord. There's no peace between these two, is there? I mean, what was
only unresolved complaints from the Palestinian FA
Correct.
as well? That couldn't be just dismissed with a handshake. And you wonder whether or not Gianni Infantino sought any advice beforehand. Obviously, he wanted the spontaneity of it maybe to deliver the moment, but it's where you perhaps need advisors who work the rooms in the days beforehand, get a sense of where things are going, rather than something that could appear a stunt. Something struck me in some of the coverage quite a bit. The next day focused on Infantino's role in it, but some of the early headlines from those on the ground seem to blame the Palestinians and Israelis more for refusing to shake hands rather than the fact they might have felt being put in an awkward situation and not wanting to because of that.
Yeah, extremely awkward spot, right? Maybe Infantino wanted to be the next recipient of the FIFA Peace Prize, and that was his way of maybe putting himself in the ring for his own prize.
Well, I thought of it as something else, which is we've often thought of FIFA having ambitions to win the more illustrious Peace Prize, the Nobel one that Donald Trump missed out on, and then FIFA gave them a prize of their own. And they've always sort of positioned themselves as being for peace, uniting the world. Perhaps that would be an awkward situation if Gianni Infantino and football more broadly got the Peace Prize from Nobel and Donald Trump didn't.
How dare you, Rob? The Nobel Peace Prize is not more prestigious than the FIFA Peace Prize.
Yeah, wipe your mouth out. And I'm sure Gianni Infantino remains extremely popular in Norway, where the Nobel Committee is based.
We'll have FIFA on talking about how prestigious or not the SJAs are, and the more illustrious journalistic prizes.
Well, it'd be great to be in communication with them. So if that's the hook, come on in. Love to talk to you, FIFA.
Well, and the sense was from the FIFA Congress and all the meetings that Gianni Infantino will, not unexpectedly, be sticking around until 2031. Well, if he's re-elected next year, but he's certainly got enough backing as it stands.
I thought this was farcical because you got a situation where FIFA's council said that the presidential electoral period would start on April the 30th. And so you can't declare officially until then. Even before any potential rival has been allowed to declare, Infantino's already got an absolute majority, 200 of the 211 member associations, because all of Asia, all of Africa, and all of South America said that they're going to vote for him. That's 111 or 110 out of the 211 members associations. I mean, it makes a farce of the whole thing, doesn't it? I mean, why are they saying that if they don't even? Why are they promising that if they don't even know who's going to stand against him?
I think this is where the American networks at election time make their big race calls, and I think we can now project the winner of the 2027 FIFA presidential election to be Gianni Infantino.
Yeah, and he's obviously given them that thing they covered most, which is money. He's lavished huge amounts of money on football associations.
And more money this week.
More money this week in different ways. And coffers are bulging. The World Cup in the US up to 12 billion, US, Canada, Mexico up to 12 billion, and then they've projected for the next 4-year cycle after that similar amount. It's full of money. Hand this out, hand World Cup places out, hand tournaments out. It does work, doesn't it?
But how reliant can they be in future on Saudi Arabia? They got the $2 billion for the Club World Cup last summer because of various link-ups with Saudi Arabia and DAZN, Saudi buying a stake in DAZN. We've always been cautioning on this pod about what happened in China with Xi Jinping being interested in football, then withdrawing the backing and the funding, none of the big players getting those lavish deals to go to the Chinese league. And everything seemed too good in Saudi Arabia, didn't it? All these sports, including snooker even, with the golden ball suddenly getting a windfall from Saudi Arabia, all the money going into boxing, these fights, the never-ending Riyadh season, and it seemed like a cash machine or an ATM that just seemed open for anyone in sport to get from Saudi Arabia. But now, this week, confirmation that the huge attempt to launch a hostile takeover of golf worldwide is over. The fact Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund cutting off LIV Golf.
$5 billion. What is there to show for this $5 billion? Is a sort of whole new golf courses everywhere.
Phil Mickelson's new house, probably a new car. I mean, the amounts of money they were paying these golfers, hundreds of millions of dollars. John Rahm, the estimates are between 300 and 400, 500 million signing on fees. Bryce DeChambeau, but I think what it shows is this stuff is not reliable. We've had absolute chaos. We had lawsuits. We had Donald Trump being involved. One of the recipients, of course, his courses were used. Congressional hearings, just utter chaos. And it's like, thanks, lads. Yeah, we've burned through this $5 billion. We don't want to do it anymore. I don't think anyone looks particularly good here. And the golfers obviously have made so much money, and they've moved on.
In some countries, there is a cost because in Australia, they spent 45 million Australian dollars, so about 30 million US dollars, on upgrading the North Adelaide golf course to help stage a LIV Golf event from 2028. That who knows if that will happen, if they'll manage to get the funding to survive. So there'll be political questions that are being asked now in Australia.
Rob, that is super interesting, because I would have thought if any funding needed to happen, any money to improve anything related to Saudi, there's only one wallet I'd be looking at. It would be the Saudi one. The idea that local courses and governments are paying for upgrades to attract Saudi events, that actually seems pretty crazy. And if I'm an official there, I'd be asking big questions about the people who made that decision.
But they did attract, they say, 100,000 crowd to the event in Australia earlier this year. So maybe they were thinking that it would grow. But we'd already started to see doubts about how long this funding would go on for. There is a LIV event due next week to take place in the US. Where's it at? Trump National in Virginia. The Trump family benefit.
Yeah, and he's been involved. But the bigger question here is, so this was the big moment. We were at the first game in 2022, and in that period, sports generally has had its hand out, and Saudi's been willing to pour its gold into those hands. But it's not just golf here. That's PIF. We've had snooker events that have been rolled back. That's not with PIF. That's with another government entity. We've had the WTA tennis. They're not going to continue doing that. And remember, all the questions of human rights and women's rights in Saudi, all of the tension, hand-wringing, well, that's not going to happen anymore, that event. And boxing, which has been another of perhaps the big high-profile recipient of Saudi money, Oscar De La Hoya, former great champion, promoter now, saying, boxing is at risk of a Saudi change of strategy. That money is going to dry up, and what does that leave? So, And Newcastle, the Premier League football club, they're having a season review right now. What does it mean long term?
Well, Yasser Oromayan, the Newcastle United chairman, had been leading LIV Golf, ultimately all falling under the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who oversees PIF.
Yeah, I mean, I think Newcastle United is probably secure for the time being, but obviously there's going to be a question mark for the longer term future. I mean, the thing about Newcastle is that they've not spent hugely. It's not like when the Abu Dhabi took over Manchester City and absolutely, spent crazily to get them up to the top. They've been quite conservative. They got it very cheaply, something just over £300 million, probably worth a lot more than that then. I see actually Eddie Howe, the manager, said that the Saudis are still behind it, and I think they will be for the time being, because it actually makes financial sense to keep investing sensibly there. But it certainly didn't make sense at LIV Golf, and they're looking around at everything, because they've got huge spending commitments coming up for the World Cup in 2034. That's going to cost them enormous amounts of money. They've got lots of other things, concerns over oil, what's happening in the Middle East, I'm sure, was focusing attention very much on their budget. So, yeah, a bad day for those who wanted the Saudi money, a good day for those who thought that Saudi sport washing was a bad thing.
And it was in Senate hearings that they raised concerns about human rights in Saudi Arabia when they were assessing whether or not the PGA Tour should be allowed to merge with LIV Golf. That was the big announcement in 2023. That would have seen LIV take ownership, really, of both the PGA Tour and the European Tour, now known as the DP World Tour. Donald Trump got involved last year at the White House trying to bring them together. Obviously, there was some residual benefit given Trump golf courses would be staging events. Something notable was the LIV statement itself was all full of euphemisms. If you didn't know the story, you wouldn't know what it meant in their search for a new strategy and investment to come in. They're trying to sell stakes in the 13 franchise teams that make up LIV. You can barely remember any of the names of them. So any private equity firms want to put money into them, well, we'll see if that comes to pass. One thing suggested to me was maybe the number of events could reduce from 14 to even as low as 6, and it becomes a sort of tiny adjunct maybe to the DP World Tour, even if they link up. So it's like an extra competition. But the PIF statement itself was pretty clear. I was wondering whether or not they'd be so blunt, but they've signaled to the world, we are only going to now invest in things that will make us money, because they said that, they took the decision to withdraw from LIV after this year in light of their investment priorities and current macro dynamics.
Yeah. Bye-bye LIV Golf. That's my attempt at a Harris prediction. The idea that this thing is going to be played beyond 2026 is absolute pie in the sky. It loses huge amounts of money. Those players are going to try to return to whence they came from on the various tours. And this has been a very expensive and short-lived embarrassment.
And they're still dealing with the consequences of the war. There is a ceasefire at the moment between the US, Israel, and Iran, but no peace deal in place. Uncertainty over sport in the region. Formula One season is due to end in November and December in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi. I did a story this week after being with the bosses of Silverstone and F1, how Silverstone has offered to step in with an extra race, or sort of doubts, can you stage one in the winter? F1 plans for things to go ahead as usual as things stand. But barely even mentioned the World Cup coming up. It was a talking point when King Charles this week made his state visit to the United States, and he referenced it at the dinner with Donald Trump.
The United States and Canada will be among those to welcome the world as hosts of the FIFA World Cup. So in one sense, Mr. President, as heads of state, we are joint hosts. We call this game, by the way, football, Mr. President. And I can only say, as the head of state of 5 competing countries, I will be watching the matches closely and with great enthusiasm. After all, we always like favourable odds.
Those 5 nations, England and Scotland, Canada, also Australia and New Zealand. Well, that about brings an end to this week's episode of Sport Unlocked. As ever, send your questions in, comments, thoughts to us at Sport Unlocked on all the socials. DM us, also sportunlockpod@gmail.com. But for now, thank you for listening. Goodbye.